Today, we're going to talk about the brilliant ideas of Amartya Sen. He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist and philosopher who totally shook up how we think about success, well-being, and even justice. And his work really makes you ask one fundamental question.
So let me just ask you this. When you picture a successful country, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it just the one with the biggest economy, the most money?
For a long time, the go-to answer has been all about the numbers, right? We look at things like GDP, gross domestic product, or how much money the average person makes. It's neat, it's tidy. But Amartya Sen comes along and says, hang on a second, is that really the whole story?
And that's where we get to the absolute heart of his argument. He was convinced that the way we measure how well people are doing, well, it has to be about so much more than money. It needs to get at what truly matters, things like human dignity and the real opportunities people have to live a good life.
All right, so for this first part, we're going to dig into how Sen's work really challenges these old-school yardsticks for progress and kind of forces us to look beyond just the dollar signs.
But, to move beyond just money, he had to take on an even bigger idea, and that's justice. He argued that to really get a grip on well-being, we have to change our whole focus, from trying to design perfect systems on paper to looking at what's actually happening to people in the real world.
You see, for ages, philosophers were trying to answer this question. What would a perfectly just society look like? Their whole focus was on creating these flawless rules, these ideal institutions, all from the top down. Sen basically said, yeah, that whole approach, it's kind of missing the point.
And he used these two ancient Sanskrit ideas to explain the difference, which you can see right here. So on one side, you've got niti. Think of niti as the formal rules, the perfect blueprint for a just society. But then on the other side, you have nyaya. And nyaya is all about the realized justice that people actually get to experience in their lives. The goal here isn't to build a perfect utopia. It's to look at the world as it is and ask, okay, how can we make things here just a little bit less unfair?
And this right here is the key takeaway. For Sen, justice isn't some destination we finally arrive at with the perfect map. Nope, it's a constant, hands-on process. It's about looking at the world around us, spotting the real, concrete injustices, and then figuring out practical ways to make them smaller, one step at a time.
Okay, so this whole focus on what's actually happening in the real world, it leads us straight to the absolute core of his entire philosophy. And it all boils down to one simple question. What are people actually able to do?
Let's make this super concrete. Imagine you own a bicycle. Great. On paper, you have a resource, a way to get around. But what if you live in a city with no bike lanes, crazy traffic, and it's just plain dangerous to ride? Do you really have the freedom to travel? Sen would say, absolutely not. And that bike example? It perfectly lays out his framework. He breaks it down into these 3 steps. First, you got your resources. That's the stuff you have, like a book or some food. Second, you have functionings. That's what you actually do with that stuff. Like you read the book or you become nourished by the food. And this is the most important part, you have capabilities. A capability is the real freedom you have to achieve those things. It's not just having a book. It's having the genuine opportunity to become an educated person. It's the whole range of possibilities that are truly open to you.
So you take those 3 ideas, resources, functionings, and capabilities, and they all build up to his most famous contribution of all, the capability approach. It's a brand new way to think about and measure well-being.
So what is it? Well, to put it simply, the capability approach says we should judge how well a society is doing, not by its wallet, but by the real freedoms its people have to live lives they find meaningful. It's all about what people are truly able to do and to be.
And this chart right here just makes it so clear. Look, you can have 2 people with the exact same $50,000 income. But if person B has a chronic illness that costs a fortune in medical bills, their actual ability to turn that money into a good life, their capabilities, are completely different. Income by itself tells you almost nothing about that story. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about is this huge, powerful shift in perspective. We stop asking, what stuff do you have? And we start asking, what are you genuinely free to go out and achieve with your life? It's a game changer in how we think about progress.
So, why does any of this matter outside of a university classroom? Well, because these ideas didn't just stay in a book. They've had a massive, real-world impact.
When you start thinking this way, your priorities just completely flip. Suddenly, the goal of government policy isn't just to grow the economy, it's to expand people's real opportunities, Development isn't about building more factories, it's about enhancing human freedom. Things like education and healthcare become absolutely crucial, not just as line items in a budget, but as the fundamental tools that give people capabilities. And you realize that having open, public discussions, democracy, is one of the best ways we have to find and fix those real-world injustices.
And hey, this is not just theory. Sen's work was one of the key inspirations for the United Nations Human Development Index, the HDI. It's a tool the UN uses to measure a country's success not just by money, but by looking at things like life expectancy and education levels. That is a direct, real-world application of the capability approach.
So, I want to leave you with this thought. If we really, truly started to measure success, not by how much money we have, but by the real freedoms and capabilities that people have to live a good life, what's the very first thing we would change? In our towns, in our countries, or in the world? It's a big question.